An octopus can match the color of a rock it is sitting on in under a second, with skin that has no color receptors, using eyes that are almost certainly colorblind. Nobody has fully explained how. It is one of several things about this animal that do not resolve. This is still unexplained, the science that hasn't finished arguing. So how does an animal that cannot see color reproduce it? Where is the thinking actually happening when 2/3 of its neurons are not in its head? And why does a creature this capable live for barely a year before its own body switches itself off? 3 open questions, and none of them has a settled answer. Start with the machinery of the skin, because that part we do understand. An octopus carries millions of pigment sacs called chromatophores, each one surrounded by tiny muscles. Contract the muscles and the sac stretches, spreading its pigment across a wider area. Relax them, and the color shrinks to a dot. Beneath those sit reflective layers that scatter and bounce light, producing blues, greens, and silvers that no pigment in the animal actually contains. And above them, the skin can raise physical bumps called papillae, changing not just color but texture, turning smooth skin into something that reads as coral or weed. Every one of those chromatophores is under direct neural control. This is not a chemical change spreading through tissue, like a chameleon shifting over seconds. It is a display driven by nerves, which is why an octopus can produce a pattern in well under a second and run waves of color across its body like something moving on a screen. The scale of that control is worth stating. A common octopus carries on the order of tens of millions of chromatophores, and the neural wiring to drive them consumes a substantial share of the animal's motor output. It is running a display the size of its entire body surface, continuously, while also moving 8 limbs. Now the problem. To match a background, you must first perceive it, and octopus eyes contain a single type of photoreceptor. One receptor type means no color comparison, in the same way a single black and white sensor cannot tell red from green. By every standard test, these animals should be colorblind. This is not a marginal finding either. It has been confirmed genetically, in the receptor proteins themselves, and behaviorally in tests where animals fail to discriminate colors they should easily separate. The colorblindness is about as well established as the camouflage is. It is also worth noticing what the camouflage actually optimizes for. Most predators hunting octopuses, including many fish, see color differently from us. Matching a background convincingly to a fish may require less color fidelity than it appears to require to a human diver holding a camera. There is a leading hypothesis, and it is genuinely strange. Their pupils are unusual shapes, and a lens focuses different wavelengths at slightly different distances. If the animal changes focus rapidly and compares the sharpness of the image, it could in principle infer color from blur, extracting from timing what we extract from comparison. The unusual pupil shape matters here. A wide U or dumbbell aperture spreads incoming light across more of the lens, exaggerating the separation between wavelengths rather than minimizing it, which is the opposite of what our own optics try to do. It is an elegant idea, and it remains unproven. It predicts specific behavior, some of which has been observed, and it requires a lot of processing for a modest result. There is also a second possibility that is harder to test, that the skin itself detects light directly. Light-sensitive proteins of the kind found in eyes have been detected in octopus skin. Whether that amounts to seeing is a much bigger claim, and researchers are careful about it. Detecting brightness is not the same as forming an image. But an animal whose skin can sense light is a different kind of animal. Which brings us to the second question, and the more disorienting one. An octopus has roughly 500 million neurons, comparable to a dog, but only about a third are in the central brain. The rest are distributed through the arms, in clusters running their whole length. Those arms are not simply receiving instructions. A severed arm will still reach, grip, and pass objects toward where a mouth would be. An intact arm can explore a crevice and identify what it finds by touch and chemistry, while the animal is looking elsewhere entirely. The arm solves the local problem itself. Their nervous systems are also built from unfamiliar parts. Octopuses have no myelin sheathing of the kind that speeds vertebrate nerves, and instead evolved giant axons, nerve fibers so large they were used for decades in laboratories to work out how nerve impulses function at all. Much of what we know about our own neurons was learned from squid. So where is the octopus? In a vertebrate, the answer is straightforward. There is a brain, it receives sensory data, it issues commands. Here there is a small central brain negotiating with 8 highly capable subsystems, and the honest scientific position is that we do not know how unified the resulting experience is, or whether unified is even the right word. Even the question of whether an octopus knows where its own arms are is unresolved, since it lacks the detailed body map a vertebrate brain maintains. The behavior does not simplify it either. Octopuses solve puzzle boxes, open jars from the inside, and one species carries discarded coconut shells to assemble into shelter later, which is about as clean an example of tool use as you will find outside primates and birds. Individual animals in captivity are reported to behave differently from each other in consistent ways. There is also the mimic octopus, which does something no other animal is known to do. It appears to impersonate specific other species, flattening and banding itself to resemble a flatfish, a lionfish, or a sea snake, and reportedly selects which impersonation to use according to which predator is present. Then there is the genetics, which is where it gets stranger still. Most animals edit RNA rarely, using it as a faithful copy of the DNA instruction. Cephalopods edit it constantly, recoding a large fraction of their neural proteins on the fly, particularly in response to temperature. There appears to be a trade. The genetic sequences around these editing sites are unusually conserved, apparently because changing them would break the editing machinery. So the animal gains the ability to tune its nervous system rapidly, and pays for it with a genome that evolves more slowly at exactly those locations. Nobody is sure what that buys them. The favored guess is adaptability to temperature and environment within a single lifetime rather than across generations, which would suit an animal living in variable coastal water. It is a hypothesis with good circumstantial support and no decisive test. And now the third question, which is the one that unsettles people most. Almost all of this ends within 1 to 2 years. Most octopus species live a single short life, reproduce once, and die immediately afterwards. The death is not incidental, it is programmed. After laying eggs, a female stops eating and tends the clutch until she dies. Researchers trace the process to the optic glands, and removing them extends life dramatically, with the animal resuming feeding and abandoning the eggs. There is a switch, and it is thrown deliberately. Males die too, some weeks after mating, through a related decline. The pattern is consistent across most species studied, though a few deep-water octopuses brood for extraordinary lengths of time, in one recorded case over 4 years, which suggests the clock is tunable rather than fixed. That is an extraordinary thing to build. An animal capable of tool use, individual behavior, and rapid learning, engineered to delete itself the moment it reproduces. Whatever advantage that provides, it comes at the cost of everything the animal learned, because there is no overlap between generations and therefore nothing that can be taught. That last point may be the most important thing about octopuses. Every one of them starts from nothing. There is no parent, no group, no accumulated knowledge. Everything an octopus knows, it worked out alone in about a year, and then it is gone. Which reframes the intelligence question entirely. We tend to measure animal minds against ours, looking for social learning, teaching, and culture. This is a lineage that separated from ours something like 600 million years ago, built a large nervous system from different components, distributed it differently, and threw away the ability to pass anything on. So what remains unexplained is not a detail. We do not know how they perceive color. We do not know where their decisions are made, and we do not know why the design includes its own termination. What we have is the clearest available example of intelligence arriving twice on this planet, by an entirely different route, and only one of the two routes is the one we understand. The universe keeps refusing clean answers. Subscribe, and meet the next one, the place on Earth where GPS quietly lies.